Builders don't wait to know everything. They iterate, ship, and learn. That mindset is the unlock for the future of law. I'm Sal Carranza, host of PossibLaw. I sit down with builders and visionaries to capture the patterns of their success so that you can deploy their mindset in your own practice and shape what's next. We're recoding the vibe in legal.
PossibLaw, recoding the vibe.
I am super excited to welcome Arthur Rothrock today to PossibLaw. He is a litigation savant in California who decided to become a builder, and apparently now he just works all the time. I'm super excited to learn what led him down this path for his journey and talk a little bit about the future of legal tech and legal in general. Welcome, Arthur.
Thanks so much for having me, Sal. I'm looking forward to it.
So we know each other a little bit. Some people we know connected. We've talked before. So hopefully this conversation will be more like a friendly neighborhood chat at a coffee bar instead of a structured podcast. But I hope today we get out of this for our audience, the idea that, look, if you have an idea, it is the day and age where you can go build something if you want. And it doesn't have to be a huge scalable company like you're doing, but the idea that lawyers can become tech fluent, can actually impact their day-to-day in a way they didn't before is part of what I'm trying to get across for PossibLaw. But before we get into all that, I actually really like to start with all my guests just to get to know you a little bit beyond, the professional. And so I like to just ask, what do you like to do when you're not, tied to your desk trying to build your company?
Well, the most recent thing that I've been doing is still not escaping my desk. Unfortunately, my favorite pastime is playing video games with friends where, I've had this new game that I really like called X4 Foundations. And basically it's like I don't know if anyone ever played Freelancer back in the day, but you have a spaceship. You can pretty much do whatever you want. You can be a fighter pilot. You can buy like a trade ship and you can go to different stations and trade. You can go all the way up to building your own station, and then you can have like a carrier that launches other fighters. So the scope of the game can get pretty huge. It's like this big, huge simulated universe. It's single player. And the most frustrating thing though, is that the UI is absolutely atrocious. It is like the most frustrating thing to ever interact with at all. Like if you need to order a ship somewhere, you want to buy something, you want to trade something, it's like, I don't understand where anything is. It's confusing. There's a lot of buttons and menus and none of it makes any sense. And so I said, you know what? Fuck it. Like I can build stuff now. I got Claude. I can do whatever the hell I want. Imagination is pretty much the only limitation now. And if you can clearly communicate what you want to do, AI is pretty good at doing it. And if you're stubborn enough to just keep bashing your head against it until it does the thing that you want, it'll do it. And so the thing that I did, and this is the most nerdy thing that I've done in a very long time, is I was a big fan of the Mass Effect series growing up. Great series of video games, of course, science fiction. And there is a AI in it called Edie. And it is like your sort of ship AI that like helps you with stuff and talks to you, eventually gets a whole body, it's a whole thing. And I went, you know what? It would be really cool if I could just have an AI in the game that I could just tell it what I want to do and it'll just use the UI crap for me and do the things that I want while I fly around and blow shit up. And I was like, is this possible? And so I started talking with Claude and it was like, yeah, it's totally possible. We can do a bridge. Like we can grab these couple things and then now you can make use of the chat window in game to talk and it'll pipe it out to Claude. And then we'll give Claude access to a bunch of tools that the game uses, like when you click a button, so it can intercept that and then reproduce it for you to like go send a ship somewhere, go deploy a satellite, whatever the crap is that you want to do, that you don't want to fight the UI in order to do. And so I started doing that and it worked pretty good. I could sit there and talk to Claude like in the game and tell it to do stuff. And of course it wouldn't do everything. So I'd have to go back and say, hey, check the logs of what I was talking about, see where I got frustrated and see if you can give me that functionality. And we'd iterate. And then the most recent thing was last night, I thought, it would be even cooler if I could actually just talk to Edie and tell her what I want to do. And then she could just give me updates as I'm like playing the game. So now I don't even have to open a menu. I don't have to type anything into the chat. That would be really cool. And so I went and I talked to it. And of course, Fable just has come out. It is amazing. And it was like, yeah, no problem. We can do that. Just give me a clip of like what she sounds like. I'll pull in this local model so that we can have it like talk to you. We'll make it outside the game because it doesn't need to be in the game. It just needs to hear your commands and interact with the game. And I said, that's awesome. So I went on YouTube and I found a a whole clip of or like pretty much every voice line of Edie in one of the Mass Effect games, and I threw it at it. It cool, chopped the whole thing up, trained like fine tune a model on it, talked to me, and it was like this really weird diction where it would like part of it would be normal calm, and then at the end it would be like this really high pitched thing. I was like, I feel like we mixed in because she has like yes or no or like kill him or she has
Yeah.
like some yelling stuff, and I was like, why don't we cut that out? Just give me the calm stuff, retrain the Laura on it, and then see if we get pretty close. And we just this morning I managed to get it down, and it sounds like Edie from the game, and I could now push a button and talk to her and tell her to do something for me while I'm flying around. So the answer is in my free time I'm still glued to my desk using AI now just on some of my favorite hobbies and fixing my frustrations with other stuff. Like now I can get more enjoyment out of a game that I really like that has this one thing that's bothering me. I don't know crap about modding games other than installing them myself, but now I can like build one just because I've imagined what I want and execute on it. So that's what I've been working.
I love that for so many different reasons. It brings up a bunch of rabbit holes I think we can go down. But the starting point is that anybody who says that you don't need to like step away or decompress is missing something. This whole like 996 San Francisco work all the time, your brain doesn't work that way. And you need to give yourself something to just think. Lots of people have talked about it as sort of like letting your brain lay fallow so that you can think about other things. And video games, being outside, spending time with your family, whatever it might be, as long as you do something different, that dichotomy in your system actually leads to all kinds of other things. And I actually think in your world, it's a perfect example of like, hey, I was messing around with this video game, but now I've actually learned how to do voice and training with Laura. And maybe you knew that before, but the point is that like you can do it in a way that is no cost. I don't mean money wise, but just like the stakes aren't very high. Like if it doesn't work so well, it's your video game. It's not your legal workflow. And you can try things. And it's one of the things that I've talked to a lot of people on this show and just generally is that I think a lot of lawyers are afraid to go try. And so I always tell them is like, just think about something at home that you like want to mess around with or you want to give it a shot. Go build that thing and you kind of see how far you get. And it's pretty exciting. So I think that's an awesome little thread that you pulled there. I want to take that idea of building, of learning, and work backwards a little bit because I know you are now building this legal tech litigation startup, which, by the way, in of itself is kind of unique because everybody's in transactional right now. And so that's another interesting thing. But you didn't start there. And so I want to work backwards a little bit and sort of understand how you came about to where you are today. And so part of the reason I do that is because, a lot of my audience are lawyers. They don't think they can do this kind of thing. And so I like to give them a roadmap a little bit of others who found success. And so let's start a little bit with, look, before you started building a legal tech startup, what were you doing? You were a litigation attorney.
Still am.
Still
I
are.
I brought one case with me, and it's still not dead. We're set for trial in
They never
November.
die. The ones you want to die never die. So
Nope, of course not. And I mean, I'm not even sure that we'll go forward in November at this point either. So who knows?
how long were you practicing before you started building Legion?
Yeah, so I was probably practicing around 7 years. I've been practicing overall around 10. It was sort of, I grew up in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania, reading a bunch of science fiction books in my parents' basement. I thought this is cool. Like I love science fiction because it's always like pushing the envelope, exploring the universe, cool tech, all this new stuff. And, now we get to live in literally one of my science fiction books with AI. And I really wanted to innovate. As I got older, my dad was also sort of a big nerd. He coded his own like software platform for his kung fu schools because he used like Microsoft Access or whatever that old thing was, and he made this whole custom thing. It's a huge pain in the ass. No one knows actually how to use it except for him, but he built it himself. God damn it! And so I grew up in a house where he taught me how to build my first computer, and so I thought this is awesome. I would love to build and sort of innovate, and I really just love interacting with innovations like new tech. Anything like the whole crypto thing was awesome. I buy like all the new laptops. I have like VR stuff. I have you name it. I'm probably playing around with whatever sort of new tech gadget. But unfortunately, whenever I hit college, I was sort of confronted with the realization that doing this stuff is actually really boring. I hated coding. I didn't want to sit there and peck away at a keyboard, typing in variables and doing math and trying to figure out how to actually program this stuff. I just wanted to make the thing. So I said, all right, well, the hell with it. And so I, ended up becoming a lawyer instead, but I still really love the tech and I wanted to be like where things were being built and where things were happening. So I came out here for law school and now I've been here ever since living in Silicon Valley around it. And of course, if you put yourself in a situation where, you are bound to run into another builder, innovation, or opportunity, it will tend to find you. And I tend to not say no whenever those things come up.
I love that. I think one of the things that people don't realize is that being technical, so to speak, technically you're a software developer, doesn't necessarily have to mean that you are a full stack developer or you can write code for every type of language out there. It actually is more along the lines of, look, I understand systems, I understand frameworks, I understand how these things connect together. And if you can do that, you can get really far now. And a year ago when I was doing this stuff when we were talking, you still needed a little bit more of that like true coding background, even with the coding models. And then something happened in like mid-January, right? And people started talking like, oh my God, I don't really know what happened. Obviously the models got better. Anthropic dropped one, I think that was 4.6, that was much more geared towards coding. And if you knew how to ask what you wanted within the frameworks of code, you could get really, really far. But for you, is that what drew you back? You knew the technical stuff, sort of. You just didn't enjoy the nuts and bolts of it. And now you could kind of get really far. What made you sort of come back beyond right place, right time, seeing what might come of it?
And I did want to sort of agree with you on you don't really need to understand how to code. You just need to understand the systems and processes and all that good stuff. I mean, this is a total tangent side note, but I do feel like as at least a millennial born like right in that time where technology was sort of weird and new and just hitting, you had to do a lot of troubleshooting. Like you had to really understand how things worked and connected in order to troubleshoot and figure it out. And there was, I always had to, whenever I wanted to play video games with my friends and have a LAN party, trying to figure out how everyone could actually work together. One of my friends doesn't have the game, he doesn't want to buy the game. So I have to figure out how to rip an ISO file off of it and then, okay, well, now it needs a key because there's, DRM. Okay, well, how do we rip a key from somewhere? Like, so there's just like a lot of, if you can't do it immediately, then you just keep trying until finally you figure it out. And AI has really sort of enabled you to be able to do that. And I think that for me, that pull never really went away. I'm always frustrated by things. I mean, like a game with bad UI, I'm mad. Anytime you interact with any legal tech software, I'm usually mad because it was developed like in the early 2000s. It hasn't changed at all. And it was probably picked by an attorney that's 20 years dead. That was the original founder of the firm. And there's no one decided to change it. You have 15 different things all over the place. So I'm just like always hitting that frustration because I was like, hey, this sucks. We should be always looking for something better, for something more efficient. And usually in law, it's no, just bill. Just bill. Like, why are you here talking to me about this tech shit? I don't care. Just bill. And that frustration doesn't really go away because if you're confronted with it every single day. And legal work can also sort of be like that. I mean, when you explain to the 100th client how discovery works, or you have to write your 100th meet and confer letter, or you've had to do your objections to discovery for the 100th time. Like it's boring sometimes. Like it is just like it's not intellectually rigorous. It's not really. It doesn't help your client that much, other than the fact that you have to do it. No one else is really going to be able to do it. It's really bad if you don't do it, but that doesn't necessarily means it's really moving the ball for your case, so to speak. And when ChatGPT first dropped, like the 3.5 version, whatever it was, September, October 2023, somewhere
Yeah.
around there. Uh, of course, me, love innovation, saw it, tried it out, and was immediately like, this is going to change everything. Like, this is going to be phenomenal. Like, I don't have to do all this boring crap anymore. Like, as long as I am stubborn enough to talk to it and explain to it in excruciating detail how to do my job, it'll be able to do it. And then now I've only had to talk to it less excruciatingly as we go. Like now it's more intuitive. It sort of understands more. We've refined everything and like it just gets better and better and better. And the whole thing really came about because I was I was already starting to look at how to make use of it. Like I was like, cool, what if I hooked it up to like a case law database? Because, they lie to you, they hallucinate. So I was like, well, it seems pretty easy to solve that. You just connect it to a resource and it can just pull off the resource. You just tell it how to go find that. And so I hired like some coders off of Fiverr that were in like Pakistan. I started investigating like how to actually get cases. And that's when I started to realize that there's a duopoly. It's sort of like Thomas Reuters and Lexis have that locked down. I was like, okay. I went to the Harvard Case Law Access Project, and that was a great thing. Now, finally, it's open source. But back when I looked at it, it was still under the license of Ravel. And Ravel, of course, got acquired by Lexis. And so it was like, you can't use it for commercial purposes. I'm like, well, that's fine. It's just a hobby anyway. We'll see what I can do. And then, but I couldn't get like modern cases. I couldn't get current cases. And I was like, okay, well, I mean, it's all public, right? We have a right of access to like our own laws and case law. So surely I could just go find it online somewhere, right? Yeah, you can, but you will get hit with a wall of Lexis saying, hey, this is all under license by Lexis. You can't use it for commercial purposes. You can only look at them one at a time. You're not allowed to scrape, and we'll kill you and your whole family if you do anything different. I was like, what the fuck? Like, they just so no one else is allowed to innovate in this space because you guys just made an agreement with the California legislature that you'll publish this crap and then no one else is ever allowed to use it. And so I was like, man, this is brutal. So my early foray into doing legal tech was not great. It was very productive in that I learned a lot about what our industry is and who the big players are and how locked down things are and how hard it is to actually innovate, other than selling to lawyers being the hardest thing to do of all, of course. But then, I was still like pushing up. I was like, I want to do more. I want to do more. And so that led me to go on Reddit. And I was like, hey, is there any other lawyers by chance that are doing this? Because, you can't put everything into these large models. It's client confidentiality, attorney client privilege, all that good stuff. So I started messing around with local models, but they're small, they're dumb, they don't reason very well, they're not very good. And I was like, oh, fine tuning is the thing. Like maybe you can fine tune it for this. And of course, the answer was sort of like no. I mean, I got like maybe two other attorneys responded and were sort of dipping their toes in. But this one guy, uh, he reached out to me and he said, hey, it's cool you're a lawyer doing this stuff. You have any ideas for use cases? I said, oh, yeah, I have a million ideas. And I gave him a few and he's like, cool, let me call you in 2 weeks. I'm like, all right, internet stranger. Sure. He called me in 2 weeks. All right. And he calls me up and he goes, I'm at Stanford. I'm at the Law LLM Hackathon. I put together a team and we built one of your ideas. You should come help me pitch it. And I said, oh, that's the coolest thing I ever heard. That's why I moved to Silicon Valley in the first place. So, hell yeah, I'll go help you pitch it. Met him, met the team, saw the product, did what I thought I could do, pitched it. And then after that, we founded the company. It was like, I got a proposition for you. Do you want to build this thing? I said, hell yeah, you've already shown me you can execute. I drove him back to his hotel room since he flew out from Toronto, Canada for the whole thing. And then we got off to the races after that. And I think probably 6, 7 months later, I had left my law firm to work on it full time because they decided we had a direct conflict of interest. So it was sort of like the early heyday where no one really knows about AI. They don't trust it. The firm policy was immediately banning all of it, no chat GPT, which was fine because around that time I had switched to Claude anyway. And I felt, a literal read of their policy was don't use chat GPT, which I wasn't. So
Well,
and then
you
now
are
here we
you
are.
are a lawyer, so you know how to read a contract. So that is a fascinating story, and I think it's one that is both not unique because I think you never really know how you come about the thing that you build or drives you or whatever it might be, and also a thing that I always try to stress, which is we got taught sort of in law school this whole idea of like how you think like a lawyer, and it's very reactive, it's very risk adverse. And so this whole idea that you would iterate constantly to get to something, tied with that learning is actually the journey to success, is really hard for a lot of lawyers because they're just so binary. I have to have this right. It's the only way it works. If it's not right, you can't do it. When, software developers, company builders are like, no, I mean, I have no idea what this is gonna look like in 6 months. I'm just gonna keep building and try to solve a problem. And when I get some sort of signal, some sort of product market fit, maybe I'll double down in that window, right? How did you get comfortable with that iteration? Is it just because you grew up with a dad who was like, let's build computers? Or was it something else?
I think it was, I mean, I think it was sort of intrinsic. I mean, like even I want to play games with my friends and one of my friends has a problem and they can't play with us. I'm like, okay, well, I'm going to go solve that problem. And usually when you try to solve one problem, two more problems pop up and then you got to go solve those. And so you just sort of get this resilience for problem solving. And just if you're dogged enough, you could sort of track it down to the end in order to do it. And I agree. I think in law, there's this idea that we've always done it this way. And at a certain point, people forget why we even do it a certain way. And when you can't answer why you're doing something, then why are you doing it? I mean, it's sort of like, unless you have a good understanding of the why behind it, then you shouldn't be doing it. But law is very much like we do it this way because we've always done it this way. If we don't do it this way, something very bad will happen. We don't know what anymore because we don't want to look at the local rules to figure out formatting. So we're just always going to file this 14 point because, if we don't, then maybe that's wrong. And I don't want to spend the time to look it up. And so you just end up in this like frozen in time. I mean, my first law firm job or second law firm job, they had a typewriter in active use. And I was like, this is insane. Like I thought it was a museum piece. I was like, oh, haha, that's funny. You have a typewriter. And then the paralegal sat down and started working on it. I was like, oh God. Oh, and then I booted up my PC and it was Windows 98. And I said, oh God, again.
I when I started, this was 7, and I had to spend an hour getting taught by the head of all the legal secretaries how to use a dictaphone because you weren't allowed to write. You were supposed to talk into a dictaphone. And I tell this story all the time because it's so funny because now we've sort of come full circle and all I do is talk to AI. And I'm like, okay, maybe I was getting trained 20 years ago for this new novel idea. But part of it is that, for me, I was similar to you. Like, I was always the guy who was like, why don't we do this? And they were like, just go back and bill hours. But what about this? Just go back and bill hours, right? Tap on the head, go back and do your thing. And, it took sort of a defining moment, partner in a large law firm, procedures law firm. I was like, I telling my wife, much smarter than me, I just need to find a better platform. It'll be a better platform. She's like, you are miserable, man. Like you hate your life. Why would it be better over there? And it was the first moment that I was like, shit, I somehow ended up here. I followed this path. It was a good job, made good money, gave security to my family. All those things are good, but it didn't actually identify with who I was or wanted to be or really what gave me passion, right? And when I took that thread backwards, I'm like you, man, we could probably trade boxes of random crap I've bought that, just don't work or it worked for like a day because I wanted to try it. I figured out a way to hack concordance on like my first year because I didn't like something it was doing. All those kinds of things. Yes.
Always knickknacks, man, everywhere. I got these
Everywhere.
like sunglasses that display screens in front of me.
I love it.
Always everywhere.
It's funny because when the Vision Pro came out, my wife was like, oh, you're buying one of those, right? I'm like, for the first time ever, I'm going to not blow $2,000 on a random thing. And she's like, who are you? Like, I don't understand. And I was like, I've got enough other random things I'm paying money for. I'm just going to pass that one. Regardless, I think that Ernst, that the genuine passion I have that you also have to learn with no real objective other than I don't know what I'm doing right now. I'm going to keep trying until I get better at something. Turns out to be pretty good in this age because nobody actually, even the experts, don't really know how to leverage these systems to their fullest way, right? And so I remember when it came out, I have some friends in this space who are very kindly have kept me apprised over the years, and they were like, hey, Sal, it's that moment. It's time to jump in. And I was like, okay. And I had a thriving, legal practice hybrid consulting firm. And I was like, I need to focus on this. And I sort of pivoted. And for the last 3 years, I've done that. And so when people ask me, how did you get good at this? I said, I spent a lot of time learning and trying, right? And yes, part of that is I like to read and I like to learn. And so that was an easy flywheel for me. And I get that lawyers are really busy and they have really a lot on their plates. But it is this moment in time where I just keep telling people, if you like to learn, find 30 minutes a week. Just go try some of this stuff. It's amazing how far you can get. And it'll help you with everything else you're doing. Everything else with AI, if you understand better how to use it, you're going to find more success. And so I love your story because that is kind of what I tell everybody. And you are living breathing it right here on the PossibLaw podcast. So I love that. So let's talk a little bit about Legion then, because I think one of the unique things is there aren't that many litigation AI platforms out there. Everything is transactional, and there's a reason for that, right? It's structured, it is simpler, it also has pretty clear outcome decisive opportunities where you can see what good looks like, whether you run a standard eval or even a subjective eval of some sort. And so the starting point, though, I want to get at is something that I think people miss is you said you had a pain of how you were doing things and you wanted to solve that pain. And so let's start there. What was the first thing that you really said to yourself, look, this is transformational technology, but I have a pain point I think I can solve. You said you met a guy on Reddit, which by the way, I love because I do this all the time and it's such a missed opportunity. What was that first thing that really got you moving?
I mean, the very first rough prototype that we ever put together was doing a discovery separate statement because I had many not fond memories of spending like hundreds of hours essentially on putting together these 200 plus page separate statements, which for anyone who's listening that doesn't practice, it's like you get an interrogatory, it asks you a question, and then you give your response. And then when the other side doesn't like your response, they can go tell on you to dad, go to the judge. And one of the documents that you need to file is a separate statement where you lay out who said whatever. And then also you need to then lay out all the reasons, all the legal and factual reasons to compel a response to it. And usually if you're like what I for this case in particular is like a construction defect case, those fuckers love to object to everything and ask like 1,000 questions. And so of course you just have to like go through a wall of objections to argue vague and ambiguous. It's not a, not a good objection. It's very clear. This is not compound. Why are you even asserting this is compound? And you have to go to the mat on every single objection because if you don't, then you've basically agreed, yeah, that objection stands and it's really hard to use it later, in your favor. Cause like, hey, we objected, you didn't do anything about it. So you got to go to the mat on everything. And that usually results in just a ton of work and time. And it's boring because it's always the same cases, it's always the same arguments. And so our first thing that we had put together was like a really rough, dirty, like, let's do separate statements. And so I had to put together like I had to research every single objection you could ever make to discovery to build our like analysis bank to draw on. And we had to figure out how to extract like whatever, objections there were in the interrogatory. And then we had to figure out how to apply it and then chain this all into a massive system that could put together like a 200 something page separate statement. And unfortunately, we ended up not rolling with that right away because it was sort of a very niche thing. And we just started, working on complaints and just doing discovery. And then so it took a while to work up to doing separate statements because as much as I hated doing it, the volume wasn't there to sort of justify it for the business. So the other sort of aspect is just fighting Word all the time is a pain. I hated having to copy paste stuff from the AI. So even though I loved AI, it was transformative. I still had to explain to it what to do every time. Still had to copy paste every time. And there wasn't like a really good way to like give feedback on individual things. Like it would just have to be the whole thing, it would regenerate the whole thing. Like it was just there was still a lot of friction involved with it, even though it was saving a lot of time. And so Legion sort of came of that of like, hey, I'm using AI all the time, and there's still this friction and this frustration with it. We can do it better. And of course, Westlaw wasn't coming out with anything, and they acquired co-counsel and then butchered that. And then Lexis was trying to do their protege, which also sucks because they're trying to appeal to the lowest common denominator in all 50 states, and that usually means that no one in any of those 50 states likes it. It's also sort of to your point, litigation can be very different and nuanced, and everyone has their own sort of like ways of doing things. And so appealing to that is sort of difficult. But I figured, hey, I think I know the best way to do this stuff. If we get the attorney pretty damn close, then I think we have a pretty good product. So we'll just we'll learn how to use AI for them. They can go to the platform. We'll just say, hey, this is what you need to give us. Here's what you need to tell us. And then we'll give you like, hey, here's the whole thing. You don't have to fight Word. We got rid of all the crap in Word that you hate. We just give you a very clean like view so you can interact with it. And then at the end, when you're happy with it, like we'll give you all the tools to use AI to revise stuff if you want. And at the end, we drop it into a fully formatted Word doc and you're good. You can basically send it to your client right away. You could file, serve it, whatever you want to do. But now you don't have to fight it. We bake in how to actually do that task for you. And, basically it was just like, I don't want to do this stuff all the time. I like arguing. I like thinking. I like doing the research. I like putting together like motion. Like there's a lot of other stuff about the practice I like doing, but this stuff I don't really like doing. I don't really enjoy putting together a complaint. Really enjoy sitting there and trying to think about 10 different ways to ask a question that won't get objected to. And so we just decided to bake that into the platform. Like we'll get rid of the stuff that Arthur hates doing. And then hopefully other attorneys also hate doing that and agree with him and will want to pay money for it. And then we'll build up from there and we'll start tackling more and more stuff. And so the thesis has been, we'll eat all the first year paralegal work. Now we're moving up to second, third year work. The quality is getting better. And then after that, we can start layering in the analysis tools. We can start taking a look at your case file. We can tell you what you should be doing next. We can, help look at the discovery responses you got and the deposition transcript. And we can sort of tell you, hey, there's some inconsistencies here that you may want to drill in on. And so really it was just laying the groundwork of a platform that could eventually turn into a litigation OS, so to speak. And so, the bar for us as a company is we have to look at what everyone else is doing and we need to be able to build out something that is so complex that can do all the things that you want, is very customizable. Like you have to deliver a lot more value now in order to, I think, survive. So it's just completely changed the way that we do pretty much everything. And it's such a wild experience to be along for the ride for it.
If you love learning with PossibLaw, subscribe, follow along. Check us out at PossibLaw.com. We have tons of great content coming. Thank you. One thing I want to just sort of double click on is this idea that with a coding model, you can kind of build whatever you want in a weekend, right? And it is true that if you know what you're doing, you can build something that used to take months. I always love pointing out that if you ask Claude or Codex or whatever, the coding model, and you say, hey, these are the 5 features I'd like to do, give me a plan for it, it will always rank it based on what it's known in its training data for what it used to take an engineer to do. And so it'd be like, well, this one's 6 months and it's a lot of engineering time and money, so we should table that one. And I'm like, no, Claude, no, you're going to build it in like 3 hours for me. Thank you. And that is an interesting thing for people to realize, which is you can build a lot of features. You can build really fulsome platforms and products very quickly right now. But that is not a business, and that is not a true usable product for everybody. There's all kinds of things, especially in a regulated industry like legal, that require actual detailed analysis, which is why the way I always talk about this is not from the perspective of, Harvey and their billions of dollars versus, Mike OSS, who he built it over a weekend. I look at it more from the perspective of, okay, what are the key use cases that you need to build against, and where do you need domain expertise for that? And so I might need domain expertise from a software developer to make sure we get payments right, or make sure we get containers right, make sure we have clearly separated tenant data, whatever it might be, right? Instead of just vibe coding the whole thing. But I think this is the key point, and this is what you got at here is, if you know that with the right domain expertise and the right tooling, you can build almost any feature that somebody comes out with, the platform is no longer the moat. Even your user base is no longer the moat. What the moat is delivering clear value that the customer wants to pay. Now, when you can do this in an afternoon, you do have to. And so I think the thing for me, I always look at startups like yours or huge startups like Harvey is, what is the velocity that they are taking to improve their product? And do they have a really solid feedback loop with their customer? If they don't, they're in trouble. But every great product starts somewhere that you actually don't end up. It's just kind of how it works. And so I actually love your journey for Legion, because you realize, look, we have to get something to value that the customer is going to want right now. And then we can start layering on more and more and more. Arthur, it's good to talk to you again. We recorded this podcast about 3 weeks ago. And in the interim, the U.S. government issued an export control directive for Anthropic's Fable 5 and Mythos 5 models, their newest state-of-the-art models. That has critically impacted your business, and so you decided to file a lawsuit this week. I'm sure lots of people will analyze the law and the likelihood of success. For my audience, I thought it would be more helpful to discuss your vision, why it was so important to you to file a lawsuit. So, what compelled you, Arthur? What really made you take on this huge task?
Yeah, I mean, I think, on Thursday night, the government picks up the phone and gives Anthropic an ultimatum. And, that night they shut off everything. There was not really any evidence. There wasn't a hearing. There wasn't any like very clearly defined process. And of course, Fable 5, we started using it immediately and it was really doing a lot of great work for us. We were able to tackle some pretty big projects that were difficult to pursue with Opus. I mean, the abilities of Fable 5 were pretty phenomenal for us. We thought it was a very big upgrade. And we're a really small shop. So we have a handful of senior people. Most of them are engineers up in Canada. So they're directly impacted by this directive if it stands, right? I would have to move everything back to the United States, or we're just going to have them use the like outdated models to do this work. And that didn't really work for me. I think that we're building software that lets one good lawyer take on a firm 10 times their size. And Frontier AI is sort of the only reason why that's possible. It's a huge equalizer. And the day a better model ships, we're on it. And that's how a team of our size outbuilds the big, well-funded shops. And because this field sort of moves in weeks and not years, being on the best model is really important in sort of the whole game. I mean, it's not just about the model itself being in the product. It's also about being able to build faster and quicker with a small team. And the minute that goes away, we get outstripped by the larger, more well-funded, more personnel type competitors. So when they flipped that switch and they turned it all off, it didn't really just land on me. I mean, it landed on everyone small enough to need that equalizer in the first place, since there's millions of people relying on these models. And as a lawyer, the process is what I can't really get past. I'm not saying that AI doesn't carry any risk, and I'm not saying that the government should stay out. I'm just saying the opposite. I think if there's a real risk, you bring in the experts, you measure it, you let the people that are affected by it weigh in, and respond, and then you act. And we sort of got the reverse. We got a shutdown overnight, aimed at one company's two models with the same capability they were worried about, that's still running right now in other products that they've never touched. And, pulling this model didn't really take anything off the board, I would say. And, we build tools so the outgunned can fight back. And, this time we're the ones who got switched off. So we're going to fight back. I mean, we're going to put our money where our mouth is. We build tools to make these sort of David versus Goliath possible. So that's why we did it.
I think the way you have, couched this idea that, David versus Goliath, I think that's obviously very accurate in this instance. I also think, you know, being in legal tech, you do have people like you who have the skills and the domain expertise to, if they think is something wrong, to go fight kind of the good fight. And whether you win or lose, I think that's an admirable stance for you to take. I'm also curious, the David versus Goliath idea. Are you using Legion to help you with this?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, a couple of our investors are at Spencer Fane and they're a great firm. And so I tapped them for this and I said, hey, this is what I'm kind of thinking. I use Legion to throw the fact pattern at it. I did a bunch of research. I gave it to our complaint builder. I was workshopping the causes of action to see what could sort of work. And it gave me the first draft. And then I started iterating on that draft, because we're primarily in California. I used AI to convert it to DC so that we could file it there. And then I started doing all the site checking and, using AI for the research to sort of pull all the relevant cases to see, do we have standing? Is this a redressable injury? Because it's an interesting case because Anthropic is sort of caught in the middle of this and it's really not their fault. So, I mean, I think there's a clear chain there, which is why I said, I think we have a great case. And so I did a lot of the work myself and they were, of course, super encouraging and supportive. They're very AI forward themselves. So since they know I'm a litigator, they were happy to let me take first crack at it and then hand it over to them. And we also used Legion for the preliminary injunction that we filed as well for the initial drafts. I put together the research, gave it to Legion, used the memorandum of points and authorities builder to kick out our first draft and iterate on it. I used it to put together my declaration, the RJN, all that good stuff. And then once I got the initial draft, I then used AI to again convert it to DC and then gave it to the Spencer Fane lawyers to start going over it and improving it and iterating on it from there with their own AI tech as well. So we've managed to keep the bills pretty reasonable based on me being able to do the first drafts. And I'm free, I'm cheap at this point. So, and Spencer Fane attorneys have been great. They're AI savvy and also using that so we can get a much more polished product. I mean, I think there's no way that you could push out what we did in the time period that we did. I mean, really, it took me a couple days to put this together. And then it took, a few days to actually engage the law firm and then for them to start digging at it. But it really only took us a few days to throw together a pretty robust complaint, preliminary injunction that's well supported, that we feel good about. And there's no way you'd be able to do that, for less than probably 100 grand over a period of a few weeks if you wanted to do this before AI would be my guess.
Well, I think it's going to be very interesting to see how it plays out. I wish you a lot of luck in kind of fighting the good fight and doing what you think is best for not only your company but your customers. And I applaud that because I think a lot of people are kind of just standing by watching, and I think it's always an important thing to go and try to do your best. So for the rest of the show, I think as you talked about Legion now, I think it'd be good for us to get into how Legion works. And one of the parts of that that I think is very interesting is, starting with how Legion does pricing because I think it's pretty unique.
Sure. So our pricing is based on per page of output. So if you want like a 10-page complaint, it's $100. And we sort of settled on that for a few reasons. The pricing itself was like, hey, how long would it take me to do this? How long would it take a paralegal to do this? How much do they charge for this in general? Like, how much would it cost? And then what's the price point that we could offer it at where even distrustful attorneys who don't really trust AI would be like, I'll give it a try. And then, I mean, that sort of became the whole focus of our model where like we don't want to charge you a subscription because I hate subscriptions. I'm tired of paying Westlaw like $1,200 a month or whatever it is, and every other subscription that I have to keep track of that maybe I don't use. I was like, well, why don't we just make a platform that's very friendly to the consumer? And I'll say, hey, you can use this when you need us, and it's great for me because then I know, if you're not using it, and that gives me sort of immediate feedback rather than, you treat it like the gym and you're just paying me $100. I don't really have a motivation to do anything there. It's like, yeah, you're just paying me $100 a month. I'm not going to try to like market at you or try to get you to use the platform more or improve it. And so it's sort of just a constant live backstop and like, hey, if people aren't using us, I need to know why and then figure out what would get them to start using us. And so those were sort of the two, I guess, two or three main reasons why we went with that. And the other sort of thing is more of a practical reason. Those were the main reasons, but it's also sort of worked out where, because you are offering the best models possible and the price is pretty expensive for using these things and it's all usage based. I mean, pretty much everyone who's anything is using all the major, like even Harvey is plugged into all of OpenAI's models and now Anthropic's models, and that costs money. And SaaS has always done it from a subscription because you usually don't have to pay usage based. Like, yeah, you have your servers and crap, but it's really not that much. And you can just collect money like crazy. But now we're in this sort of new era where it's like, hey, the more a user uses the platform, the less money you make. And that sort of means if you have a subscription, then you're incentivized to give dumb models and not give them the best, or to try open source and try to cut corners and give them a worse product because you're worried about your overhead and how much they're going to beat it up in a month. If you have a bunch of power users, you can end up underwater pretty quickly if they're using, the major models. And then if you do want to limit them, how are you going to do that in law? Like, I have to do this motion now. And if you tell me, no, you're out of usage credits, whatever the hell that means, and whatever that translates to, as a lawyer, I don't understand. Then, like, cool, now I have to go grab my credit card and throw in some more money, reload the damn thing. And then now I can continue. And who knows how much anything is going to cost because you've obfuscated it like we're at an arcade at Dave and Buster's with coins. So, like, I already don't trust you. And I said, forget it. Well, like, we're lawyers. We're in the business of paper. What do people understand? You get a document, you pay it X amount of hours to get it. We'll just charge people, $10 per page. And we actually needed to change it a little bit, but like for the memorandum of points and authorities builder, we had to go to $25 a page. And like the reason for that was there is like sort of a limit in terms of how big those can get. Like under California, max is usually 15 pages for like your starter, like your initial motion and your opposition, and only 10 pages for your reply. And because of the way attorneys and me beat it up, we're just throwing cases at it. We're iterating. We're like ideating. We're like, we'll throw the whole thing out and start over. Like we could lose money on it. So I was like, okay, well, we got to increase the price on that a little bit. But in general, it scales with usage for us. Like if they go crazy with our discovery builder, it ends up 50 pages, we get $500. And we don't end up underwater because just by virtue of the fact that how much money we make scales with how much our users use us. And so that's worked out really nicely. And I think I'm seeing a lot of companies start to move more towards the usage base, or they'll do like a dual like subscription and also usage, maybe per case, maybe per document, like whatever it is. So I'm starting to see the market catch up to where we're at because they probably learned the hard way, that you'll have a couple power users and you'll realize that you're losing money on something.
Yeah, I love that. I remember when I first met you and you told me about it, I said, I think you're ahead of the game. And I was so happy to hear that you were doing that because it aligns incentives. And I'm a big believer that that always dictates success across pretty much anything you're doing. And the key thing is that if I'm a lawyer and I pay $100 for a complaint or whatever it might be, and I get it out, I can see right away whether I'm happy with what I paid or not. And if I'm happy with what I paid, I've obtained value instantly. That loop is really important. If it takes me a long time to get the value, I churn. I'm not very happy with the product. And so it also aligns your incentives because it's good for your business to make sure that they get value right away. And so you are developing for the same place. You're going to the same place. And that's really important in this age. And you're starting to see that, again, going back to why this isn't just simply like vibe code a product, actually are really important. And for those of you out there who aren't software developers, within the whole stack of what you're doing, when something comes to you, there's actually a whole bunch of tools in the background. There's an OCR, there's a parser, there's a formatting, there's a way to use docx, there's a authentication piece. There's like all these parts and pieces. And so if you can learn from your customer what they're getting, what they don't like, how to improve it, you can improve all those parts and pieces. And so I'm curious, how have you learned to iterate? Because I think that's the velocity part we were talking about.
Yeah, I think, and that was a really difficult one for a while because lawyers have very high expectations for things. And if it doesn't do exactly what they want right away, immediately, they don't want it. And the last thing that they want to do is explain to someone all the things that they're doing wrong to fix it for them. They would rather just not use it and they'll just do it the old fashioned way or whatever. They'll just bounce off. And lawyers are very busy. I'm very busy. I would probably not pick up the phone for a vendor asking me about like, hey, how can you do my job for me? Like you're the one who's supposed to figure this out, give me the product. Like, why are you calling me wasting my time? Like I need to bill. Like the firm tells me bill, bill, bill. And so, it can be really hard to get that sort of feedback loop directly from the attorney. And so a lot of it has been, at least in the early days, it was like me just knowing I'm like, hey, I'm not happy with this, and I have some theories about how we can improve it, and I suspect that they maybe like to do it differently. And so a lot of it was the subject matter expertise early on, but then that sort of evolved into, we finally started getting some good customer advocates that were like, I love your product, I love what you're doing, I hate like all the stuff that you're tackling, and now I'm having fun practicing law again. And however I can help you, I will help you. If you need samples, I'll give them to you. Like if something breaks, I'll tell you. And I'm like, hey, we can turn around a feature and a bug fix in like 2 days. And they're like, oh hell yeah. And our chat window, our chat support, even though we're like an AI applied AI company, does not go to AI. They go straight to our Slack channel. You'll talk to us. You can have my phone number, my cell phone, call me. Like litigation crap comes up at like 11 o'clock. I've gotten calls at 11 o'clock at night on a Saturday, and I had picked up and they're like, oh, thank God that you're here. I have this filing and like, I can't, I need you to help walk me through getting this motion done. And I'm like, yeah, no problem. And then, so you get once you sort of build your customer advocates, they will willingly tell you everything that they love and hate about your platform because they are now invested in your success along with them. And the other sort of thing has been in the platform, like, we'll have the little thumbs up, thumbs down thing. No one uses it. We have the feedback like panel. No one uses it. But what we do know is when someone starts a workflow and they don't buy it, And then that's sort of like a sign, hey, they did something because you see the whole thing before you actually buy it. Like we
Right.
will give you a preview, you can edit it, you see every little piece of that thing until you actually want to download the fully formatted Word doc and do something with it. Then we charge you. So you already like we try to build trust so that it's not a black box. We can just like, hey, $100 for a complaint. Who knows if it's good? And whatever, you just get it back. And so that's sort of usually like a good indicator of like, hey, I need to go look and say like, did something break? Like, did it give something that was not standard? And it's a very good like immediate feedback loop for stuff. And the attorneys that use it are like, yeah, I don't care. Like it's all work product. I'm not going to use it anyway. And whatever. Like as long as there's nothing sensitive in it that we're going to use, like we're not training AI models with it. Because frankly, I don't even think training AI models is worth it at this point. It's really just about explaining how to do the task well enough that it can do it. And then you just need to set up enough sort of tools and frameworks to sort of appeal to your customer base. You need to really understand your customer base because a lot of our iteration, we haven't been able to do all the things that I want to do to solve like some of the pain points just because, we have a million other things that we need to do. But like one of the things is being able to upload an exemplar and like taking a look at how their styles are. How do they like to, format their things? And then how can we bake that into the product so that all that they need to do is give us what they've done before and we can mimic that for them and give them all the great tooling that they like. But because they're super anal attorneys and it needs to be the certain way, we'll give it to them. And, but a lot of it, at least for like, we do get some of that, but just a lot of it is you just really have to understand your customers. I mean, I don't know how many people would think about, hey, older lawyers, and I guess I can't say that much older because I'm pretty sure like 40 plus folks do this. I don't know if you're with camp or not, but some like to do double space after period.
Oh my God.
And
The
like
worst.
you have like, I will die on the hill of single space. We don't use typewriters anymore. Right. But that doesn't mean that I'm going to enforce that on you in the product. I did consider so I'll back up a minute. So like for our MPA builder and stuff, I put in a little toggle where it's like I like double space after period. So whenever they go through, they don't have to edit that themselves. They just get exactly what they want. And I debated putting in like a little dinosaur like graphic, maybe like play like a dinosaur sound like really softly on my computer. So like, but I decided we're adults and professionals, and maybe I should do that. But
I love
that
that.
was a thought, and it was discussed seriously in a meeting.
That's phenomenal. I think every lawyer of a certain age has, that story of the partner who is like two spaces and you're like, "What? What are you talking about?" So I love that you brought that up. I also part of the reason I wanted to bring this out is because I did know from talking to you before how maniacal you are about the customer and how much you want to talk to them and how much you are available to them. Because I think even in this age where you can build anything very fast, the agency and hustle of the people you're working with still matter a lot. And you don't always find that. And I think if you come back to incentives, the billable hour, the incentive to do more even if you don't have to, the structure of kind of what I call the monopoly of the legal industry for lawyers means that it's not that all lawyers were bad customer service based people, but a lot of them were. They just didn't care so much about the customer. And that has really hurt kind of our brand. There's a reason so many founders hate lawyers. They just feel like they've been taken advantage of. And so I love the hustle. I love the agency that you show because I think it does go to that trust factor. And I think that's really important because if I am a lawyer or just a business owner or anybody and I'm trying a new product, especially from a startup, I need to get comfortable with the idea that if I need you, I'm giving you kind of the try. I need you to give me back that trust. And as soon as you give it to me, I'll frankly fall over myself to help you make it better. And I think that's really important for anybody listening here. If you're trying to build something, focus on the customer and you'll figure out a good place. And so I think that's really important for everybody to understand is that if you start using Legion, you have Arthur and his team there if they need you. And I think that's really important.
I would also just add to that, I think there's also a big component of being respectful of your customer base. I know that I had a lot of disagreements with my co-founder early on about calling them. And I was like, why? You don't need to call them. Like they're busy. Like you're gonna get the front desk person. And then when they talk to you, you're like, what do you need? And you're like, can I get some feedback on the product? No, they're not gonna want to talk to you. And so it was sort of like I will respect your time. Like I usually don't call our customers what I usually do is I'll send them an email and I'll follow up in like a week or two. And because, like they get busy, they saw it, but they didn't read it. And I only contact them when it's important, or I think that there's something where I'm like at an impasse. I'm not quite sure if this is something that I want to spend time building or not, because oftentimes it's just faster to build the damn thing in the first place than it is to like noodle on it for a week and like, talk to people and say, hey, would you pay for this? Like just build it and see if they'll pay for it. Uh, and so I think that a lot of attorneys like that because there's this hesitation of like, oh, you're a salesman, you're trying to sell me something. I don't really want to talk to you. And you're like, yeah, I don't give a shit. I have to, I'm not going to call you. Like, here, you've signed up. If you want to engage with the platform, you can. Otherwise, like, go away. I don't care. And they're like, well, wait a minute. Why is this guy telling me to go away? He doesn't like, okay, well, now I kind of want to look at it. And, okay, well, maybe if he emails me, I'll respond to him. So it's really just sort of understanding, like, figure out what you're comfortable with doing and figure out how you're just be very understanding of who your customers are, be respectful of their time. And if you do that, then they'll give you the respect back. Like they know what I'm emailing them. I'm not just spamming them like, here's a product update or like, I'll occasionally do this because I know that they want them. But I'm not like just writing them a bunch of like crappy ad stuff. Like you just get like spam from like everything you sign up for. It's just like a bunch of nonsense that I don't care about. And so I want to make sure that when they see my name in their inbox, that it's from me and that it's probably something that either I need from them or that would interest them or benefit them in some way. And then, then they'll engage. But if you don't establish that where you can give them that value just from your interactions with them, you're going to have a really hard time. So I feel like there's a couple pieces to it. Yes, you do want to hustle, but sometimes hustling is not calling someone 5 times in a week just to try to get a hold of them. Like it's the opposite, and they don't want to talk to you. So it's just sort of reading the room, I think, is also a pretty important aspect to you.
Yeah, and I would say that that's still customer focused. And I would also say two things for all the lawyers listening. Two things I kind of rant about myself are one, I know you don't like being sold to, but everybody needs to make money. It is what it is. Like you shouldn't take offense that somebody is trying to sell you something. And here's another thing. Generally speaking, founders, they're not trying to scam you. They're trying to actually build something. And if you give them the benefit of the doubt and give them a little bit of grace, they will do well for you. And again, I think that goes back to what you said. You know, give them the chance. If they fail at that chance, then obviously, disregard. But this idea that lawyers shouldn't be sold to or you don't have the time for it, I think is actually a disservice to your own career and your own practice. There's lots of really dedicated, really smart builders out there trying to do something good. And if you just give them the benefit of the doubt, I think you're going to get further. And that dovetails into the other thing I rant about, which is everything shouldn't be free. I know this age of Facebook and the rest of it giving you everything as they, charge on your data and advertising. But in this new age, I really want people to think, look, if they gave me value, I should pay for that value, and I'm happy to pay for that value. And so that's another reason why I think we're moving towards more usage-based work as your product does, because you see that value right away. I can decide right away whether it's good or bad. So on that idea, as we sort of move towards the end of the show, I do want to talk a little bit with you about where you think the legal industry is going. You are kind of at the bleeding edge of a lot of this stuff, as I, and things are changing quickly. And I know a lot of lawyers are paralyzed, scared, outright, trying to like circle the wagons and no AI, nobody gets to use AI. And I think one of the things I just keep talking about is, look, whether you like it or not, this is a wave technology. It will change the way the practice of law happens. You can either participate in building what's next, learning what's next, shaping what's next, or you can kind of stick your head in the sand like an ostrich. And I don't think that's a good way to do it. And so where do you think we're going? Do you think we're getting to the place where anybody can just use a model? They don't need to hire a lawyer? Do you think we're going to have lawyers always sitting on top of that judgment? How do you think it's going to work?
That's a great question and a huge one. I think that there's also a few aspects to it. I mean, the first is just legal tech in general. I think it's probably going to consolidate. I mean, we have like more innovation in the past 2 years than in the past 20,
Yeah.
but not everyone is going to be a winner. And I think that you're going to see some pretty big Swiss Army knife products that can do a lot. Like, I mean, we see it with Harvey, we're seeing it with Legora, we see what Clio is trying to move into those spaces. Like, everyone's trying to get big at the same time to do pretty much everything. So I think we're going to see a lot of those platforms And then I think a lot of law firms are now evaluating, do we want to go with those or do we want to build in house? Because if you could just hire a few coders and get a couple tech savvy lawyers on it, then you can roll out some pretty good internal tools very quickly. So I think that we're going to start seeing a lot more of that experimentation. I mean, I think we already saw. I think it was Kirkland that announced like some 500 million investment into. I don't know if you need to go that hard. I mean, I would probably just hire like 4 or 5 developers and find some attorneys. I don't think you need to train a model and try to compete with OpenAI. But I digress. So I think that you're going to sort of see that, and then maybe you'll see like other folks like us that are small and trying to build out something. And, we want to stay small to keep our velocity because we think institutional drag is going to be a real problem. And we already see it with Thomas Reuters and Lexis. So I think that, that will definitely be a factor. So I think we'll see some consolidation and firms are starting to be more open to AI. They're experimenting a little bit with it. They're going to start determining whether they want to build in house, that sort of stuff. And then as far as like the practice of law generally is a really fascinating one. I mean, I think that it could go many different ways. And I'm a cynical person, so I don't have the most glowing view of where things might head. But I do think that we can probably look at what's happening with software engineers. It's probably going to sort of happen with law firms because it takes a while to find someone to hire, and it takes a while to train them up, and then they'll just leave you. We all have trust issues. Lawyers lateral all the time, and we all have control issues. And so you can't control that person, and they can't control you, and they might leave and go somewhere else for more money. And now you've spent all this time training them, and now you got to go do it all again. And so there's going to be, I think, when the attorneys start to get a little bit more savvy with AI, they're going to start adopting the tools. And they're not really going to be thinking about if they need to hire that person or not. And that's going to lead to some legacy problems, I think, because you do sort of need to have the the more experienced attorneys teaching the younger lawyers how to do law. I mean, and I think that that's something that hopefully firms will understand, and the bars will start recommending. Hey, even though it doesn't make sense, at least hire one person. Like you need to keep it going. And if you all get old and want to retire, then the whole thing just folds. Like you don't have any legacy plan to hand off the practice. You're not going to have a 200-year firm if that's what you want to do. Like, you're not setting down the process to do that because you didn't hire any of the young blood. And so I think that because lawyers tend to, and the legal industry in general tends to lag behind in general with stuff like this, we'll sort of see what's happening to companies and software engineers before we'll sort of feel the effects with law in general. And I also think that I think we'll see a big contraction in general in firms. And the reason I say that is because, whenever e-discovery tools became a thing and, like TAR for your tech assisted doc review type stuff, you didn't need to have 30 associates to do doc review anymore. And we've also sort of outsourced that a bit to other states or to the Philippines or whatever. But, as these tools sort of come around, you don't need an army of associates to, do all this research, to do a complaint, to do a motion. Like if you just have the most senior person, they can just go on Legion and then spit out this thing, and it's pretty much exactly how they want it. It's been trained on everything that they do. It has all the preferences locked in. They get it in like an hour or two. Then they're like off to the other thing that they want. Like, why do we need more baby lawyers to do this sort of stuff? And I also think that we'll see on the other end of the spectrum, I think that we have a really nice access to justice story that's coming. And I think that we're already seeing it with some of our customers where because of their ability to deal with a case that maybe only has like 100K at issue, and you would never take to trial, and most lawyers in the Bay Area would probably not do that case. She can't. Like our big customer advocate, Katie Young, she would take it because she could use our platform. We're working on demand letters now, and she would just attach a complaint that she could draft with Legion very quickly, spit it out, and then now you're already talking settlement because when you get a complaint that's big and scary, then you're probably going to come to the table and talk about it. And so you get a result very quickly for pretty cheap. And even if it goes to litigation, we handle the whole cycle. So now like we're saving their client a ton of money on the bills to just get out discovery, to respond to it, to do the motions, like all the stuff that you can get really ground down by is now sort of done away with. And I think that's really encouraging because that means that a lot of people that have been priced out of the legal industry for a long time can now suddenly afford a lawyer. And so now these issues that, they would just drop because they can't afford a lawyer can now be taken on. And so I think that there is this big blue ocean of business for lawyers if they're willing to engage with it. It may not be the most pretentious work, not the most prestigious, since those can be sometimes one and the same, but there is a lot of it and it will pay the bills. And these people are going to be extremely grateful because you helped them with a problem and they didn't have to go bankrupt because of it. So I think that we'll see a lot of that. And we're also going to see a lot of, I think, nonprofits and smaller, maybe boutique firms able to take on the bigger cases that they would normally not be able to. Like a nonprofit may want to fight some environmental issue, but they know if they go up against like Exxon, they're going to get buried in discovery and motions and wasting time and blah, blah, blah. It's going to take forever. And maybe they could just focus on a smaller fish. But when you have these AI tools coming about that can really contract that sort of time to litigate a case, to deal with that sort of shit shoveling that you have to deal with that, you know, lack of parity in the economic position between people, your David versus Goliath story becomes a lot more achievable. And I think that we're going to see that more with solo attorneys who can now act like they have 10 associates. And we're going to see that with boutique firms that are going to try to solicit business from other large companies that would normally maybe go with, your White and Case of the world, or your Skadden. And, maybe they'll go with the boutique because the work product's damn good. They can get a much better deal on it. And, so I think the landscape there will also become more competitive and pretty interesting. So I mean, it could go either way. There's a lot of neat things. I would say that I don't think lawyers are going to lose their jobs. I mean, I just think that it's going to be harder to get hired for one. You might lose your job if you refuse to use AI. And now clients are like, why the hell am I paying this guy 30K for a motion when I saw that the other side only cost them $1,000 because they used AI and they won, by the way. So I think that that'll slowly get phased out as well. But a lot of changes. I think in general, that's probably where we're headed at all levels. It's going to affect pretty much everything.
Yeah, I agree with almost everything you said. The thing I keep telling people is that I don't know what the solution is for teaching young professionals, lawyers, or any other profession, because the reason we can know what good looks like right now is because of the experience we had. And so I think you're going to start to see in all professions synthetic learning platforms of some sort where you're iterating on that platform and learning as you go in some capacity. And I think we're going to see more of an apprenticeship model, I think, for young lawyers, which frankly I think is good. And so I think on that piece of it, there's got to be some solution for teaching the younger generation what good looks like.
There is. I do want to just jump in on that really quick,
Yeah.
and it's something that we're considering a lot because, on Legion we'll have it where you can share a matter with another attorney, and so the intent, and at least the direction that I'm trying to head is, we're going to introduce Centurion soon, which will just be like a matter chat, and like it'll be in every workflow, and everyone can see what documents you're working on. And my intent is that younger associates can go in and be voyeurs essentially and see like what the attorney did. Like they could see the draft. There's version control, so they can flip back to see what changes were made. They can see the chat logs like with the AI to sort of understand what the attorney was thinking about, what they were revising, and then that sort of gives you the opportunity to like get into the head of the senior attorney that you're working for to understand like what they're concerned about, what changes are they making, without you having to go to their office and then sit down and then ask them and then have them try to remember what case that you're talking about. We can just sort of set it up where because of because we're using AI to do most of this work now, you can make that all pretty transparent to the other attorneys at your firm to like see that and get a direct insight into what you're doing, what you're thinking about. So it's a great point. I mean, I think you're absolutely right. And that's sort of the direction that we need to head because if it's all logged in there and you can read it and see it, why not surface it? Don't keep it private. Share it with the other attorney at your firm that you're trying to train up.
Yeah, I totally agree with you. And I love that you are doing and heading in that direction because I think it's really important. Because I think part of the other piece that you said is that I think the stack of people, you're already seeing it compress. What used to have 3 layers of middle management now has 2, eventually have 1, maybe have 0. The age of individual contributors kind of doing everything in the stack, I think is much more likely going to happen because you're going to have an AI bot next to you doing a lot of that work. And so I think it's going to be really important figuring out where you fit in that system, which is why gaining technical fluency on these things I think is really important. But I think the key thing here is that as work sort of expands, and I agree with you, there's a huge segment of the market that just doesn't use lawyers because they can't afford them or they don't like them or they think it's a waste. Who now, if a lot of the work is done, synthetically through a model, but I get the judgment of Arthur or the judgment of Sal, I'm willing to pay for that. Like they understand the value of our domain expertise. They just don't want to pay for all the formatting and all the rest of it that they don't want to deal with, right? And so I think there is an opportunity there where you can build a practice around your brain, around your judgment, and that should actually mean you actually enjoy your job more, even if the kinds of things you're working on aren't super complex always. You are still helping people, and I think that's really important. And I think this idea, the one thing I'll push back on you is, at least for a while, I don't think price is going to go down at all. At least at the top of the market, it's going to stay or go higher, because what's happening, and you're already seeing it, is the billable hour either goes away and you just get a flat fee, or your billable hour actually includes all the other stuff it didn't used to, right? And so now, instead of charging $500 an hour and billing 5 hours, I bill $2,500 an hour because it's compressed work, right? And so at some point, as more and more companies come into the industry, as more AI native law firms, you will see price pressure, as all market dynamics. But I think for a little while, that's not really changing, especially because of the token cost related to AI. And so one thing I keep telling GCs is, if you think you're going to get your law firm to just like give you a rate cut, you're a little crazy. That's just not going to happen, right? So
It's
anyway,
it's a good point too, because I mean, at least in my own experience, just because I can do a motion in like, an hour doesn't mean that I want to. Like usually what that means is that now I will spend that time that I save doing a better job with the motion that I have. I will spend more time on the research. I'll spend more time making sure the argument's good. Like AI lets me get a better product faster, and I think that's also going to be part of the reason why there's not going to be price cuts, because what's really going to happen is the attorney is just going to spend that time doing a better job on that task in particular, and maybe bill the same amount of time as they always did. But ideally, you're getting a much better product as a result, because they spend more time, researching some things that maybe they couldn't do before without AI, or, really making sure that they thought about how that clause is going to be read. Like, so I agree with you. I mean, I think probably the only place that we'll see a little bit of a cheapening of services is probably on the lower end of the spectrum, the smaller firms, for like, trying to capture those folks. The top end of the spectrum is like, I mean, it's bonkers, man. It's not really tied to reality at all. You have people that are charging $2,000-3,000 an hour. It's all about perceived value. Like if a company pays $300,000 on a case, they feel like they got the value out of it, then they're going to pay that money for it. And like, even if it's could be done for half that price somewhere else, it's a big name. And they felt like hey, this costs $300,000 because we're a giant company and we like to throw money at things, then so be it. And I think that's, a cycle that's going to continue, especially since big law feeds into in-house counsel, and in-house counsel gives the cases back to their buddies at the large firms. And that's just the way that it goes. And that's their market. And it's very, very hard to crack into that and change anything. So I agree with you there.
I think at the end of the day, incentives are always going to end up winning. And so as incentives begin to align in different ways for people to practice, that's where you're going to see the value. And as you said, if you're willing to pay X amount and you think that you find value in that amount, great. Everybody's happy, right? Again, back to one of my rants. This should not be free. We should pay for what we're getting. That is how this works. And, for me, as somebody, domain expert, have done it a long time, it always frustrated me no end when I couldn't really spend the time on something that I thought it mattered, either because of pushback from the client or the insurance company or whatever it might be. And I think there's an opportunity now to let really the focus, the domain expertise you have in whatever it might be, really shine in ways you couldn't before. So this has been an awesome conversation, Arthur. I can't wait to do it again at some point. I like to close out these shows by just asking you, what's a key takeaway for the audience that they can start working on moving forward, will help them, visualize and actualize the practical application of what the future looks like for them?
Sure. I mean, I think my recommendation is just be curious and be open to new experiences and be willing to learn and explore and figure it out. I mean, I think I just taught like a wine and AI night where I was teaching lawyers how to go about it, and I had some trouble because I was like, nah, I don't really want to give people like a prompt library that's kind of useless, and everyone has their own individual things that they want to do. And so it sort of required me to take a step back and think about how do I engage with AI and how do I figure out how to do this stuff in general and try to apply a framework. And I'm still working on the framework, but I will tell you that the framework is called Frame. And the sort of first part of it is F, and it's friction. It's when do I even know when to use AI in the first place? Because everyone's like, I know AI is there, everyone's using it. I don't know what I'm supposed to use it on or what it can do. And so I would say that anytime you encounter friction where you're like, I don't really want to do that thing, that's the time to use AI. And you're like, man, I don't want to write that email. I don't want to work on that thing. I want to research that. Try out AI. Now that's the time to reach for it. That's the best time to start. The next one is R, for reach out and ask it how. If you don't know how to do that thing, then you can just ask the AI how to do it. Like, well, I don't know how to like have AI write me a letter. You can be like, hey, AI, how do I write a letter? And then just say, hey, ask me questions about what I need to do. And then the AI will tell you how to do that thing. You don't need to like even know how to do it to tell the AI. It will tell you how to do it. It will tell you what it needs. You just need to be willing to do that. Identify it, figure out what it is, what's your friction, reach out, ask it how to do it. And you need to ask it well. And, that's when the easy example that I always give for this is, what would you send to an associate? Like, what would you attach to that email for something that they're coming in blind on? They have no idea what's going on. What do you attach to that email to give them the context to know what's going on? And then what's not obvious in those documents that you need to tell them so that they can do a decent job? And that's usually a good way to think about how to deal with AI in terms of what you want. Just think of it as an email to an associate, like laying out, they're coming in blind. How do you get good output from your associate? Is usually how you get good output from AI. And then after that, it's a M for make it better. Like, if it doesn't give it to you the right way the very first time, spend the time iterating on it. Say, correct it. It will make you a better communicator because it will do the thing that it thinks that you want. And if it does it wrong, you can correct it. And once it sort of gets it, you'll get a product at the end. So just because it didn't give you exactly what you wanted right away does not mean that it's useless and dumb and bad. Spend a little bit more time. Be resilient, man. Ask a couple more questions, give it a couple more things, give it like 2 more minutes, and you will probably get there. And then finally, at the end is Eve, the end of frame, which is embed it. Once you've gone through that painful process of like laying out, here's what I want to do, you finally get the thing that you really like, then say, hey, whatever we just worked on, give me a prompt or a skill or like a document that explains everything that we did, the decisions that we made, and lay out like our whole workflow that we did here today. So I don't have to do this again. And then now you can save that, and then you save it to your project, save it to your computer, and then you can use that to do that same task now much, much easier the next time around in a lot less time. And if you sort of follow that framework, you will be able to do pretty much anything you could ever want with AI. Doesn't matter what system it is, but it does require that initial spark of curiosity and willingness to sort of work through it a little bit. But there is a good payout at the end. So that's what I would want to leave the audience with.
What a great way to end this for everybody listening. You should frame that and take it home and use it every single day. Yes, I love puns. I couldn't help myself. It is what it is. Thank you so much, Arthur. Where can people find you?
Sure. So you can check out our website at Legion.law, Legion.law. You can email me at Arthur@Legion.law, ARTHUR. We have an Instagram that I don't know the handle because they banned 3 of our accounts. And I don't honestly know what handle we're on at this point, so I can't answer you there. But you can email me. I'm very responsive. I'm a lawyer. It's always attached to my head. Usually the best way to get a hold of us. If you're interested, if you're a California litigator, if you're just a giant AI nerd, if you love sci-fi, I don't care. Email me. Come check us out. I love talking about this stuff. My girlfriend is absolutely sick of it. And so I need more other people to talk to about it. So don't be a stranger. I'm happy to answer questions and not sell to you. I'm happy to just be a resource and talk about the best way to go about things with AI. Thank you so much for your time, Sal. You've been a wonderful host. Thank you for having me.
I'm so glad we got to do this. Thanks again.